Hello colorists. Okay, before you go out and buy yet another tin of pencils that you probably don't need to add to your collection, check out this video that I'm going to show you now, and I'm going to go through all of my favorite tools and accessories for pencils instead. So maybe it's not a craving for a new kind of pencil that you're after, maybe you're just looking for a new technique or a new tool to help you get more techniques. First up on my list today is some kind of pencil pot. Now I keep all my pencils, I don't store them like this, I keep them in pencil cases like a lot of you do as well, but when I'm actively colouring a page and I don't want to put them away, it's just nice to have a little pencil tidy to hand so that I can keep my little colour combos, and I use the different compartments to keep the different combinations fairly organized, and anything else that I need. I also have another little extra pop-up pencil case that I keep a lot of go-to supplies in as well. The next thing I want to talk about though, so that's just a nice basic thing you could pick up anywhere, any of your cheap stores. There's nothing special about that. But pencil sharpeners. Okay, so have you bought yourself a new pencil sharpener lately? I've got here a little M&R handheld one. This has 3 different blades. This one's quite new to me, but what I like about this is it works really good on pastels and really good on getting a longer point for colored pencils. Interestingly though, only one of these blades has got the fabled "Made in Germany" embossing on it. So when you're looking for little handheld sharpeners, find the "Made in Germany", because rumor has it, and I'm pretty sure it's well documented, that if they say "Made in Germany", they are a nice strong sharp blade and will stay nice and sharp for your pencils. This guy here though, this one is my Swordfish Curve. This is a hand crank pencil sharpener which you can adjust the depth of or the length of the sharpened point. So just to give you an example, this pencil was sharpened in this guy, and this pencil was sharpened with this guy. So you can get an idea of how the different pencil sharpeners are going to give you different results. And check out pencil sharpener reviews before you go out and spend a lot of money on one, because they are all they behave differently depending on what pencil you're using. So find someone who's done reviews on the pencils that you are using. Similarly though, another top tip with your pencil sharpeners is I always keep with me, so this comes on to my next tool, I keep hold of regular old graphite pencils that I don't want to use, because what happens is when you're using wax and oil based pencils, the residue gets caught up in the blades and can dull your blade and then make it appear that your pencils aren't sharpening. So I always run through a graphite pencil it's used to actually clear off the wax and the oil buildup from the blades, and then that keeps it nice and sharp for longer and you won't need to replace the blades as much. So there we go. Right, what's next? Let's talk about whiting out the lines. This one here is Winsor & Newton ink. It is Calligraphy ink in white, and you're going to want to use this one with a little brush. And the way this works, and you don't need a lot, but you can lay this down over your lines before you start colouring, and it won't white them out completely, but it will knock them back to quite pale. So if you don't like harsh lines, or there's something you're working on where you don't particularly want to have many lines, then this is going to be the product for you. And if I grab one of my books here, I can give you an example. So these lines here is where I've been testing out different ways of lightening up my line work before I go in. So you can see the difference between the bold black printing that you're used to, and then afterwards with this. But as long as you've used this in a light application and not gone too heavy, your good pencils will still go over it. And I should be able to prove that because in here somewhere I used it quite heavily. Let's see. So this lady, I took out the harsh black lines that were in her eyebrow and the outside of her face here, and was still able to go over it with pencils. So that's one way of whiting out lines. Another way you can do white out lines is after the fact. And my favorite pens to use, my favorite pens to use are the Posca. So these are acrylic paint pens. The other option would be something like your Sakura jelly pens, but I find that these are quite inconsistent. They work really well. I don't know if it's maybe the climate or me traveling a lot with them, but I find that they work really well at the start and then not so much. I start to struggle a little bit. I need to draw them out a little bit, tap a few times. But a nice thin Posca pen in white is a really good one. And again, you can use this for, you know, like the little white highlights, or afterwards if you want to white out the outline of a shape. So, yes, let me show you this one. So if you saw in my recent video where I whited out the clouds, the lines for the clouds, so all that line work and the edges of the horses here was all done with Posca pen after colouring. So two different methods there. So you can white out before you do your colouring, or you can white out after you've done your colouring. So cool things there. And then similarly, let me show you. It's under here. Just to give you an idea, this is a whole set of Posca pens. So this is the one that I use the most. This is the 1MR. It's a 0.7 millimeter nib, so it's very fine. But as you can see, they go all the way up to something like this. So I mean, they were originally designed for artists, so you're more likely to be using something like that on canvas or wood, but you have options there. So moving on to black pens. And why would you want black pens? Okay, a few reasons you might want to have black pens. Mostly I use them to add back in things like eyelashes and eyeliner if I'm doing portraits. But you could use these if you wanted additional details that aren't already there. So if you wanted to have a black line work for, I don't know, say you've got a picture of a portrait and it's just a floating head, and you wanted to put in, you know, you didn't want to do it like a floating head, you wanted to add in some shoulders or add details on clothing or something like that to make a page more unique to you. Then you can, again, we've got the Posca pens in black. Obviously they come in all sorts of different colors, but you've also got your things like these with the uni pens, which are just different sized nibs, black fine liners. There's a couple of good makes. You've got uni pin and Pigma Micron pens as well. These are a popular one, also made by Sakura, like the jelly pens. So you've got options there. I've got loads. Right, so let's move on to blending. Now you've got, again with colouring, you've got lots of different options here. So these are the blending pencil and a blending, I don't think they call it a stump, maybe, but these are the blending options from Caran d'Ache. You get these if you buy the big sets of their colouring pencils. So this is basically just a colourless Caran d'Ache Luminance pencil, and it will blend and burnish for you really nicely. And this version is the same as the inside here, but in a full stick version. So you can use, you know, for larger areas, and it will blend and burnish for you. If you don't like that because of all the pressure, then the alternative would be a blending solution. And you can buy them in bottles like this. This is a Spectrum Noir one. I know you can get Gamsol and some other ones. Again, there's lots of reviews out there, so find a review that matches the pencils that you use, but all of these options will work with your wax and oil-based pencils. What I have here, though, is a little jar, like from the little tiny baby honeys that you get in hotels or something like that, with a little bit of a sponge in it, because what I do is decant some of the blending solution into here and then use the little cardboard, the little paper blending stumps into the sponge, and then you can blend away like that without making any mess. I would assume that because it's solvent based, that if you left the lid off, this would eventually evaporate and probably not too good for breathing in. So this method keeps it a little bit more safer. You can knock it over, and because it's suspended in the sponge, it's gonna, it's not gonna make too much of a mess if it does. So those are the blending options that I'm living by at the moment. Also, to go with the stumps is the sanding block, and I would use these by anything that's been, let's see, anything that's picked up some colour. So also if you're sketching and you're doing your own artwork, you'll probably be familiar with these anyway, but I can clean up the stumps just by running it across the sanding paper, and then once that one gets no longer usable, I can just tear that off. So paper stumps, sanding paper, blending solution, that's an option for you. One more blending option is you can also use colourless alcohol pens. So this is just a colourless alcohol blender from the Spectrum Noir range, and as you can see, I've used it on different things. That's why it looks a little stained, but it still comes out completely clear because the alcohol in them, it's similar to a solvent blender. It will break down the binder and help you blend out smoothly. This one has a chisel nib, so if I was doing a larger area, I don't tend to use these too much. I tend to use these more for if I am using watercolor pencils and the coloring book doesn't like water. I use these because it also breaks down a lot of the watercolor pencils as well. Then we get on to erasers. So a lot of color pencils do work very good with good coloring erasers, or any eraser, but if it's a good coloring pencil, then a lot of the time you can lift some of the pigment back up again if you've made a mistake. And I carry a few different sizes with me, and I also have, where's the other one? Here we go. So for a larger area, this one here is a Faber-Castell. It's a putty eraser, so it's quite sticky, so it lifts very easily. You'll find these a lot for people who work with charcoal or pastel. These work really, really well for that, but I've had some good results with colouring pencils. My main go-to is the Tombow Mono Zero. This is a tiny, very, very fine point eraser, which will take out, because usually it's just a case that, I've just gone over the line very, very slightly and I just need to just pick it up. The eraser is very good on these for colouring pencils, and it's the fine point that I like. So for example, even if I coloured over an eyeball on a portrait, I can get right in there and use that. This one is just a random one that I picked up when I was travelling one time, and I just used this for a larger area. But whatever erasers you've got, give them a try. Different colours will stain the paper more, so some will be harder to lift than others. But for example, if you had accidentally coloured over an eyeball and it was really tiny and you couldn't erase, maybe it was like a deep red or something and it wouldn't erase, then that's when you could then go in with a white pen and fix mistakes that way. I just want to show you this one. This is a Faber-Castell Perfection, where are we? There we go, Perfection pencil. This is actually an eraser. So this is an eraser in the shape of a pencil. So it works really well, again, at getting into those smaller areas. And the other one I would throw into a mix, which I don't have out with me at the moment, would be something like an electric eraser, where you can literally turn it on, press a little button. I think they do USB chargeable ones now, and the erasers which you can replace, they come in little packs that you can just switch out when they get too short, but they literally rotate round very fast, so you're not doing too much, you know, effort, and it doesn't take long, because it's the number of revolutions is so high that it's, you know, like doing lots and lots of erasing in a short space of time. So that's a quick method. You'll have to test out your pencils with the erasers and see which is working best for you. So I might try a couple to really make sure that I've lifted the color off when I need to. Next up, I have a pencil duster. So this one, well, the clue's already there. I picked this up in the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam, and it's actually a pencil, but I don't use it as a pencil. I just use it because it's a really fine brush. But I know you can get really fine makeup brushes, and all this is for is that when you're burnishing quite hard, is you can get a lot of well, depending on the pencils. I mean, the luminance and the polychromos not so much, but eventually with the burnishing you will get fallout and little bits that have come off the pencil. I know that some of the more student grade or crafting grade pencils have that issue a lot more, and if you go to wipe it with your hand or something, there's a risk that the warmth and the oils in your skin might actually smear that little morsel of color across your picture. So if you can get into a habit of using one of these, or even feathers, I've seen people just have a feather out on their desk, and that also gets away the little breakouts of pigment without smearing it onto your paper. So this is a excellent tool which always goes into one of these. Similarly, you can get coloring gloves now. So this will fit onto, they come in different sizes. These will fit onto the pinky and the ring finger. I think they're mainly designed for people who are working on tablets, so that they, or drawing tablets, so that they don't add lines in by accident. But I like to use these not so much to stop smearing when I'm colouring in pencil, but more because if you're colouring for hours and hours and hours, you can get a little bit sore, you know, it gets a little bit too much friction on your finger. So just to protect that, these are a handy little item. Handy. So colouring gloves or drawing gloves, easy to pick up, all sorts of different, you know, price ranges and stuff going around for those. And then we can move on to pencil extenders. So when you're getting a little short with your pencils and it becomes uncomfortable to hold or difficult to fit into a sharpener, then you can pick up big packs of very cheap and basic pencil extenders, or you can get really fancy ones that are metal or decorated and things. So there's all sorts of options for that as well. And then lastly, the only other things that I would say is, have you got enough pencil cases? So I've got a video that I already posted earlier in the year from my pencil collection, where you can see all the different zip cases that I have. You can find those everywhere online. Amazon has trillions to choose from with different size counts of how many pencils it will hold. So there's that as an option. And finally, a nice easy one that you can get off the internet would be color charts or swatch charts, and there's a lot of generous people that have uploaded different ways of arranging the color families. So for example, this one is coloringwithclaire.com. She does all the big brands in color families. And then another place you can get swatch charts from is coloringbliss.com. I'm sure if you've been in the colouring game for a while, you know who both of those ladies and their channels are. And yeah, so definitely always have your swatches to hand, and be brave about cross-pollinating your different brands, because you know you can mix the colours up. They all kind of play together nicely. So that, everybody, is my top tools and accessories that you may like for bringing into your adult colorings for wax-based and oil-based pencils. And we will talk about other things we can bring into colouring books that aren't necessarily colouring pencils coming up in a future video. But hopefully that gets you started, and hopefully that satisfies that urge to go and treat yourself to something for your colouring hobby without having to spend another $100 or so on buying more pencils that you might not need. So let's see if this helps you out for a little while. I'll put in any links for anything, any of the obvious big ones. I'll put links in the description to help you go and find those. Otherwise, you know, start rummaging around all your favourite stores and see what you can find. Thanks for watching.